Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 274. We're all smiles because I'm getting punch drunk, I guess. I don't know. It's just happy day. We have a really special great co-host with us, guest co-host with us, which I'm going to have Adele introduce. I'm going to just say, hey, Jaavid, and I'll let Adele worry about the rest of all the introductions to this. As you can tell, everybody else, Ben, Dean, Lee, I think we're going to have a few other pop-ins from what I got from the emails from everyone. Robert might make a mystery guest appearance, so we'll see how that goes. But in the meanwhile, Adele, would you be so kind as to introduce our special guest co-host for this week?
I would love to. Introducing Jaavid Bharucha, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Infinito. And they have something that's new to me anyway. I'd love Jaavid to tell me how new is it actually, but it's a virtual assistant revenue manager or virtual revenue assistant. Is that the way you say it, Jaavid?
It's the Google Assistant for Revenue Management.
Perfect. Well, it sounds really interesting, and I think a lot of people need all the help that they can get, and to use their time in a more valuable way than necessarily just poring over reports. So I'd love for you to tell us about this new creation and what it can do to help hoteliers.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Adele.
Sure.
So Infinito Solutions, we've been around for about 18 months, started in Singapore. We've got about 800 plus direct hotel partners in the APAC market. We're launching it in the US. We've got, a pretty sizable sales team and we're growing. The product was built around, helping people be better at what they do, right? It's not recreating the wheel. It's not trying to put, 5 different reports on your dashboard. None of that. It's what you do, just making you more efficient. And, we started the process with that in mind. Right? How do we take the day-to-day hotel management aspect of it, report generation, digging through data every Monday to figure out what each of your hotels did. And how do we streamline it on a platform that just makes it easier, right? So where you were spending 3-4 hours trying to figure out what happened on the weekend on a Monday morning, it's a click of a button away, right? Because the system does all the work for you. It's going to give you the recommendations. It's going to tell you what picked up, what days of the week, what months in the year, any hot dates, any demand date in the calendar, and then you kind of it gives you everything before you walk in the door, so it allows you to be more efficient when you're there at your property instead of spending those 3-4 hours trying to figure out what happened. And that's the crux of the technology. And then we've got a few other things built into the backend from an AI perspective, where we take the data as it stands, instead of being a massive spreadsheet, 10 tabs long and 500 lines deep, and we take that and make it into a storytelling function. So even if your team transitions to another hotel, the data is still relevant, and the new team or the new person can very easily understand what's happening from a on-the-book space and base growth standpoint.
Can you give us an example of the storytelling feature?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking at let's say you're looking at a spreadsheet and you're looking at 365 days out, and you click on one of the AI functions is you pick a date that you want to look at, and the system will tell you, hey, your pickup has been this, however you're trending behind pace. We track pace based on the last 5 weeks as opposed to last year, because clearly last year is such a great indication right now. So we track. So the system will essentially tell you where you are, where you need to be, and if you make certain changes, where you will end up. So it's not only giving you what you need to do, but it's letting you know if you do those things, if you take those actions, where will you end up being? And a lot of times when we speak to hoteliers, that's kind of again, having been in the revenue management space all my life, being able to cut a few hours of research time in my day would have been a blessing at any position I had in the past. And that's kind of the goal behind the technology. So back to your question, Adele, is we take every single item that you would have talked about let's say, Monday morning, your GM's asking you what happened over the weekend, what's your on the books, what's your forecast, what do you expect to pick up, where are you ending the month. All of that is laid out in a simple English and understandable format. So all you have to do is sit in front of your computer and just click away, and it's going to give you everything that you need to tell somebody for that particular date and time frame.
Joe,
So
could you
it's made it
drop in the link into the chat just so people can look at the site perhaps as you're talking
Yeah.
a little bit. And I don't know, we're not on Zoom, but I'll have to say that we're bringing Zoom on. We have some strange faces to us. Robert and Trist. Haven't seen them for God knows how long. So let me introduce you to Jaavid, Robert, Trist. This is the other guy from the other side of the pond I warned you about, just so you know.
I was forewarned about a couple of people. Now I'm getting to see the faces. But so essentially, what I was going with that is, and I will add the chat in a second, Lauren.
Sure.
So what I meant by we make it easier and help people get better at it, it's the data is available, right? But it's available in different PMS systems and different RMS systems. So we take all of that data and put it into a dashboard. So if you had, let's say, a portfolio with multiple brands, you don't need to go to 5 brands to figure out what each hotel did. We bring it all to you in one database. And that for an owner operator management company comes in handy when you're looking at multiple hotels and trying to make quick decisions.
So what is it doing in order to bring your eyes straight to the problem or opportunity? Instead of having to look at all the days, I think that's what you're saying, that instead of having to look at every single day and just crawl through, analyzing it that way, it'll bring to your attention something that's new and different and needs to be changed. Is that right?
Correct. So the system's not only going to tell you what your performance is, but it's going to tell you your performance was great, but you could have done better if you did these things, right? Or if you're looking forward, it's going to give you that explanation as well. So that's one. And when you talk about highlighting, when we're looking at the portfolio function for purposes of discussion, it'll give you a roll up for the entire portfolio at the top of the page, and then it's going to give you an individual breakdown for each hotel for whatever time frame you selected. So you can then see within that date range which hotels were successful and where your opportunities were. So if you were a regional overseeing a portfolio, you would know Monday morning, these 3 out of my 15 hotels are the ones I need to focus on first, rather than looking at one at a time and then figuring out, okay, my problems are here. So it allows you to streamline that.
How does it work? Do you get an alert, or do you check your app on your phone? How is it that you are notified when something is happening?
So the program is completely app. I mean, we have an app, we have a website, but more importantly, we send you an email 3 times a day telling you where you are at any given point. So let's say, we sent you an email at 7 in the morning, said your pickup was this. We'll send you another one at 12. Then we send you another one at 3. So throughout the course of the day what you've picked up, right? Mm-hmm. My biggest challenge as a revenue leader at my previous jobs was, if I wasn't looking at the data throughout the course of the day, I'd never know what my changes were. I'd have to wait till the next day to run my on the books report, and then compare the 2 reports and say, oh well, great, I picked up XYZ rooms over the next couple of days. But now we're sending you the information saying on November 20th you picked up 10 rooms. So and we do that for the next 365 days out. So generally speaking, hoteliers, we don't look at, in a normal day, we don't look past 30, 60, 90, right? This makes me look at, maybe November of next year or October of next year, because something just picked up, a concert got announced, I didn't know about it, right? And now I'm seeing rooms being booked. So it's not only shown on your app or your website, it's also shown via email. And then as we develop the technology more, there's a little bit more AI that's going to get laid into even that reporting aspect of it.
I'm interested in what you said about that it'll show you not only how you did, but what you could have done better. But how would it know if you would have even achieved that had this circumstances change.
So we're looking at the 5-week pace, right? So instead of looking at and comparing it to last year, we're looking back 5 weeks and saying, for the last 5, Sundays or whatever it is, you priced this way and your outcome was this, right? So if this Sunday you're trying to lower the rate, the question is why? What's changing, right? Because there is no indication in the system that there's any change in the market, right? From a competitive price point to your price point, there doesn't seem to be any differences between the last 5 Sundays. So why is this Sunday different? Right?
Mhm.
Again, the system is giving you the recommendation based on pace. That does not mean you can't make your own decision, but this is based on actual analytics from the system itself. And since we map to the PMS, everything that we're pulling is real time from the PMS system.
That was a question I was going to ask, actually, is how you're getting your data, and obviously from a CRS or PMS. What systems are you integrated with to get that from?
So we are integrated with 23 different PMSs at the moment. And as we, it's funny, I didn't realize there were that many PMS systems to start with. But as I speak to more and more hotels, I seem to be learning new systems pretty much every week, right? So the way we are addressing it right now is we have our core 23 PMS systems that we work with, and then once we identify a new one, then we of course work with the partner and try to figure out if the reporting capabilities exist. If it's a cloud-based system, it's not a problem. Again, it'll take us a little bit of time, but in our case, because we've got the script ready to go, integration takes maybe 24 hours, and you're live within between 24 and 48 hours. So it doesn't take us weeks to set this up, as long as the PMS system is compatible with what we have.
What about on the brand side, Jaavid? Are you integrated with all the major brands, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and IHG?
So I am currently testing with Marriott and Hilton. The caveat is, those two brands have a 2-factor authentication.
Mm-hmm.
So we are trying to. That's a research project on my end at the moment. We're trying to figure that out. But with the others, yes.
So do you have to pay for an interface from the PMS side in order to do this? Because that can be very expensive.
No. So we run a script from your reporting platform. So let's say we pick IHG, for example, they use Opera, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would build a report scheduler in the back end and then run that as needed. So we run the report every hour, and we do segmentation every 4 hours, room type pickup every 4 hours. So we try to give you the freshest data possible.
As you kind of grow your presence in the U.S. and other areas, do you foresee any trouble with bringing data in once an hour once you reach a certain mass, like in terms of having to upgrade your servers or things of that nature?
So in the current environment, we're doing that obviously globally, about 800 plus hotels. So we haven't run into that problem just yet.
Okay.
I am sure it is something that will come up, but I couldn't answer that right now because we haven't gotten there yet.
Gotcha.
Jaavid, so far, the hoteliers that you've worked with so far, is the general manager using it? By the way, there is an app. Is that correct, or is it just a report? Like, there is something that shows up here. That was what I had understood. Did I misunderstand that?
No, it's completely mobile friendly. Yes.
Okay, so is the GM using it? Is the director of sales and marketing use it? Is it reservations, or is it just revenue managers that are using it?
Actually, it's all of the above and owners operators, right? Because from an owner's perspective, the report can be sent to any amount of stakeholders. So the hotels that are using it now are not just property level GMs, DOSs, RMs, or sales leaders, but is also being used by VPs of revenue or VPs of sales at the corporate level, who can then keep an eye on the properties. And then from an ownership standpoint, I'm going to say this, but I'm going to apologize ahead of time, right? Forecasting is kind of like looking into a crystal ball. And from an owner standpoint, when they want to figure out what's happening, the chain is the owner goes to the management company goes to the GM, and then so forth, right? And then it works its way back up to the owners. In this environment, we can give the data directly to the ownership group through the same email chain, so that they have the most up-to-date information on each of their properties as well in a roll-up format. So it wouldn't be an individual report per hotel, but it would be a roll-up saying, this is what the portfolio did for whatever time frame it is. So everybody can get access to the information.
And would it also give the owner suggestions?
No, it wouldn't. It would only give the property folks suggestions. But I'm sure if let's just say if the owner wanted the suggestions, yes, it can be made possible. I'm sure they don't want to see the entire portfolio, but it can be done. Yes, it can be included in the report form.
Okay. I have a question, Adele, if I can just bob in. Jaavid, given that large parts of the hospitality industry are still experiencing a reasonably challenging time, given the C word, what are the benefits to an AI platform like this versus relying on other methods, trying to cobble this together manually, or trying to rely on outdated data that doesn't really exist anymore?
Well, it's twofold, right? In the current environment, especially in the US, with a few positions being furloughed and people on layoffs and things like that, GMs, DOSs, RMs are wearing multiple hats, and in some cases, RMs are overseeing almost twice the size of the portfolio they were pre-pandemic. So again, the goal here is, if they were using Excel, you can get away from that, because now the data is readily available. You don't have to sit and look at Excel to figure out what you moved for the next 365 days, because the system's going to give it to you at a click of a button. And the idea again is to be more effective and more efficient. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out where the data came from, we're just going to hand deliver it to you by your hotel.
Does it give you any information about like the rates available in the market?
It will, yes. So we work with BI tools like OTA Insight, Rate 360. So, and we connect with them. So we would be able to give you a comparison about where your pricing is, where they are, and what you should do from a pricing and ranking standpoint. And then again, if you don't have those tools, we can figure out other ways. But the pricing is derived from the BI mechanism.
I see. So it works with the tool. If you have that tool, you can hook it up.
You can hook it up. And in some cases, if you don't have that tool and you're a smaller property or independent hotel that doesn't subscribe to a tool like that, we can do a screen scrape from Expedia Rev Plus.
So what are people saying so far about the service? You said it's been, is it 18 months?
18 months. I mean, the feedback has been good. I mean, I think the challenge we're coming across now is, as people start using it, everybody wants the tool to get customized, right? So now we're at a point where, Lily wants one thing, Adele wants another thing, Jaavid wants another thing, and then, how do we fit that into the pipeline? So it's not a major issue. I mean, it's all great initiatives, right? But at some point, it's going to be what impacts the masses, what impacts us by scale. So it hasn't been a challenge in the work environment sense, but it has been from a development standpoint. So, we are looking at integrating more AI. I think I may have said this to you last time I spoke about this, incorporating like a projection function into the system, doing things that will, really help each hotel, whether they're a part of a portfolio or individual.
Is it something that you can try for a short period of time?
In the US, yes. In the US, any hotel that wants to try it, we're offering them, 30, 45 days trial. They can give it a shot, try it, use it. We'll set it up for free, no commitments at that point, and then, we can go from there. And, in Asia Pacific, our conversion from trial to live has been about 94%. So a lot of times, once you get hooked on it, and because, again, think about it this way, and I always bring it back to me is, right, if I had this information before I walked into my hotels every Monday, I wouldn't spend the next 4 hours of my Monday trying to figure out what happened. I would already know it, so I could immediately challenge my RMs and say, Why didn't your hotel, not make forecast or budget? It doesn't make any sense. You were projecting to do it. What happened? And that conversation typically happens later in the afternoon after I figured out what happened over the weekend. But now if I had this, I wouldn't have to do that. I'd have everything readily available.
And how is the pricing? Is it per room?
It's per room, yes, per room per month.
Robert's report, now the Rock Cheetah report, I should say, showed that a lot of companies are having, 29% occupancy, 50% occupancy and that's from the third quarter, which I assume is better than previously. So I'm always asking suppliers, what are you doing to accommodate that? Because obviously a 500 room hotel isn't a 500 room hotel if they have 35% occupancy, right?
I mean, yes, true, in the current environment, right?
Yes.
And to be honest, I mean, we're flexible, right? I mean, if it's a discussion about price point versus somebody trying and using it, I can be flexible. That's not an issue, right? If you need some help carrying you through to next year, okay, we can have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
With a forward-looking commitment. Right?
Yeah.
That's okay. That's part of this
Yeah.
partnership, right? But I think, sorry, Adele, but I think the one point to remember now is even if you're running at 29%, but you're still covering multiple properties, you still need to be more efficient in whatever scenario you are, because if you're a GM doing that, you would rather spend your time doing your guest relations, working on your customer satisfaction, doing other things, maybe even cleaning rooms in this environment, right? So there's other things you could be doing rather than trying to figure out what happened in the last 24 hours.
Well, that's the free trial sounds like a great way to start and see if it's right for you.
Yeah, and a lot of hotels have taken us up on it.
How long does it start? How long does it take to get up and running? From first contact to seeing the first sort of
between I can set you up if we go live, let's say today, or I can set you up by this afternoon, and you can be ready up and running in the next 24 hours.
Nice.
Damn.
Well, I don't know. That's a little slow to me.
There's one caveat, right? We should have the capability with the PMS. So if you're one of those 23 that we connect with, it's quick. If it's one that you don't connect with, then we need to go back, get the username, password, do a kind of match up our reports with the technology, and that takes about a week or so. So if you're one of the 23, it's quick. If you're not, it takes a little bit longer, about a week or so.
So, Jaavid, I'm curious because one of the things that has really come up when it comes to technology in the midst of this, after talking to so many hoteliers, is that a lot of the existing RMS solutions out there, like Ideas and Duetto and whatnot, really struggled in the face of the sudden changes that happened with COVID-19. And generally speaking, they'll need to kind of learn the data before they're spitting out accurate recommendations for a period of at least 6 months of consistency, right? Like some sort of whatever we feel is like consistent going forward. Have you been able to bridge that with your technology, or where do you see the intersection of human touch versus the automated recommendations?
So it's twofold, right, Lily? So we're still looking at last year as a guide, but unfortunately last year doesn't do much for us at this point. So when we give out recommendations based on the last 5 weeks, which in the current environment would still be COVID period, right? So
Yeah.
the recommendations are based on the last 5 weeks. Now the system is pulling data from the PMS, so it's the most real-time information. There's really no learning of the system that's involved in the process. Where some of the other systems that you referred to, I mean, it does take time for the system to learn what's happening and then kind of make the decisions accordingly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, I would say for Ben and Tristan, with the UK shutting down, basically with the lockdown, yeah, none of the systems are figuring that out at this point, right? Because it wasn't anticipated, it wasn't like the last 5 weeks, and everyone's now just trying to figure out what happens after December 2nd, right?
Well, funny you should mention that, Robert, because obviously the lockdown has been extended to December the 2nd.
Yeah.
But yesterday, the Chancellor of the Exchequer stood up in the House of Parliament and said, "We're going to extend the furlough scheme until March 2021." And everybody said, "Hold on, buddy. Hold on. Hold on.
That doesn't add up.
This stinks, guys. You're extending the furlough scheme to then, but you are swearing blind. This is only a 4-week lockdown. This is fishy." And then they were like, "Oh, look, it's bonfire night. Here's some fireworks." I was like, "All right." Okay. So let's not hold our breath for a bursting free of our confines on December the 2nd. But you're right. It's interesting how platforms, AI or Excel based, are going to handle and react to these sort of last minute knee jerk decisions. It wasn't until yesterday, literally yesterday, that the House of Parliament passed the motion. So you have about 8 hours to prep for this and go, well, there goes November.
Right.
But again, people are going to be used to from doing that.
In some strange ways, and I mean this in a positive way, not in a negative, and certainly no disrespect to any platforms that are out there, including the ones we're not talking about today. Until we integrate market demand cycle to the data integration that we're talking about, the use of historical, current, and future tense, but the data constraint where you get to point out to say, we use it in revenue sense of constrained demand or something like this, but in marketing sense, it's channel shut off. Guess what? You're not getting this segment of business because of whatever reason, whether it be legalities or whatever, you're shutting this off. What happens? And until you have that integration, I think from a software point of view that says, add me the market aspect, demand cycle, channel contributions, channel value, to what you're asking me, and I'm saying this from the context of the software, what you want me to tell you, the accuracy is going to be skewed on basically saying, based on everything I know and everything you're telling me, this is what I think. But meanwhile, as pointed out, guess what? We just shut everything off. The number just goes, as you said, ripped and tossed. It's like, it means nothing at this point. It's hypothetical BS. So until we add that segment to it, the marketing component of it, we're still going to deal with one leg out of a 3-leg race on this.
Well, go ahead, Adele.
Oh, I was just going to say, TripAdvisor just came out with the Spotlight, where they took what the OTA Insight gives, which is pretty fabulous, and added to it their market demand information. And obviously, it's a huge travel website with a lot of data information. And I'm just going to be so curious to see what impact hoteliers really feel that it's giving them. Is it giving them an edge, or is it just more, noise? I don't think you can guess until you actually try to apply it to your life.
I'm so curious as to how they've done that, given how our interactions with TripAdvisor have been and their back-end systems. Getting something that's shiny and fancy like OTA Insight and then basically mashing it into Excel is what I've got in my mind. And I'm just like, I'm not so sure. What we've been told that TripAdvisor.
I think that's putting a bridle on a race car, but that's just me.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I am curious to see what they've done, because I raised a very large eyebrow to that one, indeed.
I would say, though, from an information point of view of historical, or what I call forensic review, I think accuracy is very much there. Why did we end up where we did at the rate we did compared to our comp set that we did based on the demand that was in market? I think those are completely valid point makes that the softwares of all types right now can make. It's the future tense that I keep saying is needs to be more alternate data inputs that are not right now reflected from the marketing segmentation. I know from a revenue management segmentation, demand cycles, rate resistance, rate parity, constraint, demand to market, and all this stuff are in there. But it's guess what? You just had the PM go over and shut off anybody traveling to your area. Woof. Okay. Or you're saying that only certain segments of people can travel, essential travel and so forth. What does that translate? You have to translate that into a number for it to be used. How do you translate that? What is the quantified amount of that market segment going to mean to you? Is that only certain rates, government rates, essential negotiated rates with certain groups and organizations that you have already set established? And if so, what's the full demand of that so that you can calculate that into what you project forward as revenue? Those things I don't think have yet to be introduced into the process cycle that we're talking about to a great degree.
Well, even simpler things like weather forecasts, like is it supposed to be sunny this weekend? Is it going to be rainy this weekend? Guess what? That does impact the people to decide, hey, I want to go somewhere or stay in.
Says the man from Nebraska talking to the man from Florida who had the hurricane going every day. Number 29 is coming.
So I'm curious also, Jaavid, on your roadmap, as we look at all of these different things, do you have a plan to incorporate profitability metrics into this going forward? Because I feel that that's a big gap right now in technology. So being able, even if it's at a high level where people can say, okay, I'm going to hand enter what my margin is on Expedia versus Booking versus Priceline, and then you draw some, generalized conclusions about how to strategize, or is this system like the others based more on top line revenue?
No, it's not there yet, but the next iteration of this is going to have a labor model. It's going to have a profitability model in there. And again, it's we're going to have it on the back end, right? So the hotel can choose to, like you said, pick, let's just pick Expedia for an example. Do I want to participate in Expedia? And if I do, what is my profit per room going to be like? Or if I wanted another channel. So that is en route in development, but it's not out yet. But I think the first piece of development is going to come out, and it's going to be more in line with system projections, right? So based on what we've seen for the last 5 weeks, where do you think, let's say, December is going to end? So the system is going to give you that, and then of course you have to do your own forecast to figure out whether that makes sense. But we're going to incorporate a few things that I would have used on a weekly basis to talk to senior leadership in my company.
And please understand, when my comments were about this, it wasn't to be a dish on software as it exists now. I look at it as like, we get to talk to you at the forefront of you bringing something to market as you're adding things to them. We're going, hey, I got an idea. That's what
I'm taking notes of your idea. I am taking notes of your idea. That's for sure.
I'm not normally negative or critical unless it comes to Ben and Tris. That's really pretty much.
I think it's more Ben or Tris. I don't think there's an and in there with that.
Yeah, you know what? You're very right, Tris. You have been my favorite for I don't know how long, really. Just it's the beard. It's got to be the beard.
It's just not the same when we don't have the accents on the show.
Yeah, Robert's tried to do a Scottish accent, and he never pulls it off when he's here.
Those guys are originally from Brooklyn, right?
Scotland.
Scottish, it's crap.
Oh man!
I'm only able to stay for about 15 more minutes, but Jaavid, I wanted to see from your perspective, kind of even broader than the technology that you're working on. Obviously, there's been some setbacks in the revenue management field in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been a lot of furloughs. There's a lot of people who are trying to tighten their belts in areas that maybe we don't always think are advisable. Sales, marketing, and revenue management typically are what's generating revenue. So to try and condense those can sometimes be dangerous. So, and with that, a lot of people just cut their revenue managers altogether and said that they didn't see the need for revenue management while the hotel was closed, even if they were anticipating opening in 30 days. And let's all hope the revenue managers listening to this are managing further out than 30 days. But just kind of globally, what are you seeing in regards to attitudes regarding revenue management? Are people trying to purchase the solution to replace people, which I think from your comments, you tend to agree with our standpoint that it's not possible to completely replace the human element in revenue management. Just kind of what do you see as what's going to happen with this discipline in 2021?
So my response is a very selfish one. Having been in revenue management, it is my pride and joy. I love it. I don't think you can replace a revenue manager. You can't replace the human touch, but you can make it efficient, right? So a RM that is maybe working on more of a portfolio than he or she was pre-COVID, instead of having them struggle for 13, 14 hours a day, whatever the day it is, and if you can make it easier on them to get the data, they have more time to spend on strategy. And I think that is key, because if you can't look past the next 30 days because you're so busy firefighting the tomorrow, you're never going to be able to see what's coming next, right? And in the current environment, I think looking past 90 days is difficult. But if we were to give you that information, saying you don't have to look at every other day, just look at these 5 days in the future that have seen movement and make the adjustments, that still keeps you ahead of the game. So I think, to your point, Dilip, based on the people that I have been speaking to across the United States, including Hawaii and Alaska, I think replacing the RM is not a solution. Is not their first option either, and a lot of people are bringing them back. But I think it's how do we make them? I think the term is a utility player. Is what people are using the term as, right? You can have an RM that maybe doing a little bit of work on the sales side, a little bit of work on the ops side, doing some RM work, and kind of being able to multitask in the current environment until things get to steady state.
Well, and one thing I've seen with conversations with some owners and REITs and things like that, revenue managers are going to be under intense scrutiny to prove their ROI. I mean, it's because a lot of the firms are looking at it now going, okay, this is bad, we're doing this, but adding this additional head back, what is the incremental ROI, right? And there's going to be a lot of hesitancy to add those heads unless that there's a clear green light and this is a no-brainer. So I think you're right. I think it's going to wind up being, and the risk for really looking at discipline and moving it forward is going to be, well, yeah, we'll do it with the utility infielder, and it winds up being a part-time. It's now 30% of somebody's job, or 70, 60, whatever that ratio winds up being with a bunch of other stuff. And that it could get messy.
I agree with you, Robert, because I think that sometimes leading up to this, and we saw the same thing in 2009, right? There was a culling of revenue managers who were not really at the top of their game. They were just like benefiting from the wave of positive economics, right? So these kinds of events really clear out the kind of chaff from the gold here. So it's important that hoteliers are paying attention to what does your revenue manager really know, and also, when we're going beyond pricing, revenue managers need to approach their jobs now not as a list of tasks, not as like an assembly line factory worker. I do this, I add it to this piece, and I do this, and I come back tomorrow, I do this, I add it to this piece, and we're not going to get anywhere with that kind of thing. We're just going to be on this constant kind of looping conveyor belt. So
no, if you want to be replaced by an algorithm, that's exactly
right, exactly, yeah, perfect. But I think we need to be looking for more of that ownership mentality, almost like a CEO mindset within the revenue managers, where they're actually looking at it and making critical strategy decisions, and they can say, okay, here's where we need to go, and here's everything we need to do between now and then to achieve it, and really honing in on their strategic mindsets.
The other thing that you appreciate this before you go, Lily, because I, as a confessed marketer, was in a very heated defense discussion of the retaining of a revenue manager at the corporate level. Where I had this great relationship with the client, and they said, listen, Lauren, we're looking at what we need to do. We know that we need to keep doing marketing, but we may have to be cutting other costs. We're thinking that we have to rechange our corporate structure. We're thinking about temporarily not having revenue management. You're thinking, hey, save me, kill them. And actually I was the reverse of it, because me and analogies, I said, so if you're sailing a boat, if you want to throw the navigator overboard, sure, you got the sextant and the compass and everything else they were using, but do you know how you just go which the direction the wind blows?
Right.
Because without a revenue manager, all you're doing is following wherever you think the business is going. You're going to follow other people's revenue rates. You're going to follow, well, we're getting business from here, so we're going to have to offer this. Who's coordinating that? Who's telling you we need to get over here for total KPIs or what have you, or goals? If you don't have that in place, you're rudderless. You're just basically kind of going wherever the thing's going to push you, wherever the demand is going to pop up in market, whatever the rates you think are going to be in comparison to your market, you're just going to flow with that. And nobody's going to wave a flag and go, dudes, we're supposed to go over that way. Wind's that way, so tack a little bit and go that way. You're not going to have that person. And I said, as a caveat to this, and this is to their revenue manager's credit, they're integrating what marketing is giving them as information, so they're being more accurate about telling you what should be done rather than just, oh yeah, let's lower the rate, we can get more business, that saves my job. No, maintain the rate because marketing is telling me we got this channel of demand over here, we can hold the rate. So, as you said, Lily, smart revenue managers that aren't just sitting there going square peg, square hole, next square peg, square hole, but are actually being creative and constructive and using resources, they will have the survival about this process. And to your point, Jaavid, about your software, this isn't a replacement to somebody. It is if they're algorithmic, as Robert said, but if they're really trying to find more methodologies of having better insights, your tools are critical. It's like, look, I have a little forward sight here, maintain rate or maintain this because we're going to be doing this. We know it's coming from here or whatever. So, yeah.
The other thing revenue managers are going to have to start doing, well, I shouldn't say start doing, but they're going to do more of is cross-training into other disciplines. Even before COVID, we started to see that bleed over of reservation revenue managers getting into e-commerce and digital marketing and so on. That was starting to happen then. It's happening way more now. And I think that's going to be a necessary blend of the two, partially to justify their position, but also partially because the two do go hand in hand. So I think the cross training and having multiple disciplines, and if nothing else, go learn how to do the front desk, right? Make sure that you have multiple things that you can do within the organization, not just this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, because I don't have time to expound today, I have dropped in an article I wrote on this topic for Hotel Executive, actually, where it talks about the foundational skills that revenue managers are going to need to have in the future. So hopefully that will be helpful to any revenue managers who are listening.
No, your podcasts and white papers are never constructive. They're usually.
Yeah, we do have, after a little delay, we do have our new podcast episode coming up today, I think, right, Lauren?
It'll be up today.
Download.
I never want to face the wrath of Julie. Never want to be on the bad side.
I listened to you this morning, Lily, on my 4-mile morning walk.
Thank you.
You're
nice
so excellent. It's just full. Every single moment is an idea, a tip, something good to do. It's very good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And with that, I am signing off for today, guys.
Hi, Lily. Have fun saving the world.
Thank you.
We got to tell you where you can find Lily too, at TCRM Services and at Things Up Enterprises.
Seamless,
Anyways.
Lauren, seamless.
I know, right? I am such the quality host.
The only thing I would say,
I tell you, Bob, Ben.
well, thanks, Jack. And the only thing I would say about revenue managers widening their skill set is you can't do both. If a revenue manager in these tougher times has to take on more properties in a group or is spread thinner than they were before, how much opportunity and time and attention are they going to have to broaden their skill sets into perhaps e-commerce and digital marketing? I think it's a great idea if you can focus on one particular hotel, one ecosystem. But if you're doing an RM job across, say, 3 or 4 hotels in a small group or in a region, are you going to have the time to learn how the digital market e-commerce pieces fit into that?
Well, that's very true, but the fact is you will be, right? But people are going to be asked to do more. And that's where things like Jaavid's program come into play, actually. Yeah. I've got to do more, so I've got to find a way to make those things more efficient. Having a program like Jaavid's is a key linchpin of that.
Yeah.
So the words right out of my mouth, buddy.
And you'll find as well then that, the point that Lauren was making about the integration of digital marketing into revenue management, if that does happen in the marketplace, then we will start to see more people like Jaavid actually producing things like that because the market wants it, and there's money there to be had for it. At the moment, perhaps not quite as much. We can all see it going that way, but right at this moment in time, yes, it's useful, but it probably isn't demanded. But I think it is going to be a matter of time.
And it will require quality dashboards that don't just tie into PMS, but they tie into marketing, they tie into external signals from a variety of other systems. And I really think the key is going to be for the revenue managers to figure out what are the important signals, what are the ones that are, they're not important, or we're getting signals, but that's a crappy data source. That's unreliable data because of either the way it's structured or whatever. It's been processed so many times by other intermediaries. It's not useful. So there's a wealth of opportunity.
Again, the caveat being the integration capability. I know firsthand that as certain people are looking at other reporting sources and they consider, OTA Insight, which is great. And of course, there's, TravelClick has their own integrations and everybody has their thing. But they don't talk to each other as well, or they don't pull it. And you end up doing a redo of what you're already trying to cut down. And that is, I gotta look at this report, but it doesn't talk to this data. So I gotta look at this data because that report doesn't include it to see if it influenced what I just saw on that data. It really requires taking the ability to take what is needed from each of the sources that are providing these things and create almost a meta capability.
I call it Franken reporting. Building a Frankenstein report.
Yeah, that pulls things in from a variety of places. Because to your point, Jeff, I can go over and create a great data set for general analytics and it adds the ad campaigns and so forth. It has no connectivity to what a revenue manager truly needs. I'm telling them what's going on in marketing, but they got to know what my report says to influence what report they're looking at. It would be so great to have the integration of here's what marketing's saying and here's what revenue management data is saying. And let's put the two together to know what kind of impact we're going to be making choices and changes on. So, yeah.
All I can say, Lauren, is thank God that the hotel industry is so well organized that API data can be passed dead easy. And this is not going to be, hang
on. A handshake, not even a problem.
Yeah, hang on. Sorry.
Like a handshake to the face with a fist.
I really like what Lily said about taking an entrepreneurial mindset. If you see that, if Ivy tells you or if some other tool tells you there's a particular hole over here or something's working well and something's not, when you can adjust the rate or make a package or, put out a press release or use your social media to communicate something that's happening at that time or all of the tricks. I don't think the revenue manager should be, a one hammer, if it's everything's a nail if you've only got a hammer.
I was going to say, we're going to quote Tim Peter, all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you go to a surgeon, he always wants to cut. You need to have a full, complete toolkit. And I think that this is a great time to explore what you can add to your toolkit.
So I think we can summarize by saying no pressure, Jaavid, here. We think you might be able to save the industry. So,
But you have until December 2nd, is that what you said? Or is it longer?
December 2nd.
Yeah.
I even, to Tristan's point, I even shamed a vendor in front of a client. Go figure I was rude. Where they're talking about, well, for us to do that, it's going to cost X dollars to do that. And I literally just said, why? Well, because, no. Why? Do you have to pay somebody to do this? Is there some cost to do? Well, no, we charge. It's like, so you're just basically asking for money to something that you can just, flip a switch. Let's be fair. And they're like, well, no, it requires us. Don't even try to be.
It requires, the thingy to connect with the other thingy, and then and there's the phalange, and
don't forget the Whatchamahoozit. The Whatchamahoozit has to be calibrated. So
you understand.
As it turns out, it got integrated into their benefits program for what we were already subscribing.
The flux capacitor, though. Yeah.
Yes, and don't set the date wrong because then you're really anyway.
Yeah. Most of the time is you have to get access to template C versus template A that you're on. Yeah, that's most of the
Don't
work.
forget, you might be on the wrong edition of software. You know, you got to upgrade that. Plus,
I
buy
mean,
something more.
guys, I mean, connectivity fees, the integration fees are the resort fees of the other side. It's like, hold on, you're telling me I have to pay for something I should already get? Yes, you know.
You tell
You
me I
want
can't connect to them,
Wi-Fi
but I have to
access.
connect to you, but I got to pay you to do it, even though I'm already paying you to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm resisting hopping onto my soapbox, but I might as well because
Go ahead.
the thing that I've been working on, and the reason I haven't been on the show quite a bit is I'm the co-chair of a work group with HTNG, and we are developing a unique hotel identifier for every property on the planet, and the code is about 90% written. And we're basically making a registry. If you think of how DNS works with the internet, where you basically say, "Oh, my website is there because I own it and control it." So go to www. Whatever. Oh, and my mail server is over there. That seems to work out fairly well. Seems that the world can figure that out. So what we're doing is basically identifying an ID for every property. So the distribution side winds up getting quite simplified in terms of eliminating a lot of cross-reference tables and things like that. But the cool part is the back-end integration. Once you have that, you start using UDDIs and you go, that's my resource. I'm on X version of this API and I'm connected to that data source. And if you can start sharing that with the other organizations you work with, all of a sudden when the API updates or anything like that, it happens automatically. So the industry may change radically when that happens, and that is going to be a massive field leveler. So the ones who are out there saying, oh no, you've got to pay X to get this, it's like, no, we have our data bus. This is our data. We are now going to bolt on your service to this. And to get it, you need access to this ID that's going to go get authenticated.
Robert, will you still answer our phone calls after you turn rich and famous? I mean, if Ben were to call you up, would you still answer it, or will your secretary or assistant to the?
I wouldn't put the rich in front of it because it's a non-profit. So,
oh well.
But
Until someone says, guys, we could probably charge for this.
Well, oh no, and actually, that has been a very important aspect of this, and people who've been around the industry. This actually started 23 years ago, and the discussion was even longer before. Probably
it's almost as long as it's
30 years ago.
Count the votes in Arizona, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But the big thing is it has to be a nonprofit because you can't have Google in 2015 basically said, "Oh yeah, we'll run this for you." And it's like, no, you can't. I mean, you might be able to do a really good job at it, but the industry won't do it because your business model is incompatible with running a neutral industry registry, right? So, so it'll be. Oh, sorry about that. See,
Robert, see, you have that effect on guest
do.
co-hosts. You just make them disappear.
Exactly.
I was just ready to ask Jaavid a question. It's like, what's his timeline for growth and stuff? But poof.
Well, he obviously heard that, so he's like, "We've got to retool this to tap into this new stuff." So I gotta go. I gotta talk to some developers.
Robert, I gotta say, we haven't had you on the show for a long time. You show up on the show, and this is the first time we've lost a guest co-host.
I do what I do. What can I say?
I gotta think there's a correlation to this. But while we wait for Jaavid to come back, if he's going to get back, or maybe he had something, I gotta catch up Stephanie on a big question. What the hell is Marriott doing? Okay. I mean, seriously, they first dumped down their whole day pass, Hoopy Happy Pass, and now all of a sudden they get this whole new channel of development marketing. What? Can you know details? Because I'm just now getting up to speed with it.
No, I'm still trying to keep up to date. They just rolled out a new offers platform that's replacing BrandWorks as of 2 days ago. So I'm scrambling to see what the heck this is about. So
me too. Right? I'm like, what is all this stuff? Yeah.
Because I'm like, why can't I get in? And then it's like, oh, just pulled a new system out of our butt this week. So
after they got rid of all their third-party vendors and all their internal digital marketers, and now they left no real revenue for any or service scale for anybody. And all of a sudden they pop a rabbit out of their hat, going, "Oh, but we got this new platform over here."
I'm like, who's been building this?
Where'd this come from?
I had
Jaavid,
an
we thought
interview.
that Robert insulted you, and that's why you left. And we apologize if Robert in any way offended you.
Oh,
Robert's
That's
good
what I
like
do.
that.
I was so deeply offended. I had to hang on for a second.
That's what I do.
Yeah,
It's
Robert's
funny
good.
we were talking about Marriott though. I had an interview with Adweek yesterday, and the questions the guy was asking about day pass and stay pass and everything it was ugly. It was very, because he saw right through everything for both Hilton and Marriott, right? Because he's like, well, good. And, he started out, he goes, I was originally writing this thing about how that's going to impact like corporate travel and things like that. But he's like, Hilton, you have to call the hotel to use it. He goes, that's just, what's that? And it's like, right, what is that? It's a marketing pitch, basically.
I'd like to flip a question around for Jaavid. With what you're doing and what you're producing for reporting and the information that's providing, because Marriott brought this to mind for me, so many hotels are sitting barren because they were built because of corporate travel. And now they have no corporate travel, and transient is a elusive little creature that never chased before, or at least never really had to chase that much. They kind of got what they got, and that was it. How can what you're providing as information and insight get translated in reverse to action items that are outside revenue management's reporting and marketing's initiatives? How can I take the data that you have and say, I didn't realize that was this, and now I need to do this instead? Is there a retranslation of what you're producing and reporting that can help with that angle?
So what we're producing from a reporting standpoint is, where you should be focusing your attention on. Right? Because right now, if you're running at 20% occupancy, you don't really care what's coming through the door, right? But you do want to know what's happening in March, April, May of next year. And if things start going in the right direction, you want your finger on the pulse. You don't want to get to January and then figure out, a particular date in March just kind of got away from you, or a long weekend just got away from you in July. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I have been asking GMs to look at this is, you may not see, in a 20% market, I'll take a $79 Expedia. I don't care, right? But if I'm looking at next year, April, and I have some events on my schedule, I want to know what's happening. I want to keep my finger on the pulse, so that way I don't get to that date and then have to struggle trying to reallocate rooms. Because generally speaking, even pre-pandemic, Lauren, unless you had the luxury of time and you had a small enough portfolio, you weren't looking past 90 days. There really wasn't a need for it. But it's even more critical now that you look past it, because I think the current events, they are what they are, right? You're just going to take what you can. But looking forward is where you're going to see the technology really help you position yourself.
I guess I should add, a little bit of what I'm doing now next year is, this is what we think. This is what we think is going to happen. This is what we think is going to happen. And here's what we have to do if it doesn't happen. It's almost like we're creating a parallel of, to just what you said, Jaavid. We have things in April that we think we're going to have business on. But just like down here, all of a sudden they pull the trigger and dump every event that's in December out the door. Done. There is none of these events. There is no New Year's. There is no Christmas. There is no Santa stuff. There's no of the stuff that's normally there. Ben doesn't get to dress up in his cute little outfit with the beard and drink heavily while he sits on his lap. Something he's going to miss. But the idea of it is that now all of a sudden all that business that was wrapped around that and may have already pre-booked. Maybe they were in the window of opportunity. They pre-booked because they thought there was opportunity for rate. Now, all of a sudden, what do you do about that? Do you reconnect with the people that booked that says, hey, before you cancel, we can do this instead? Or do you look for dropping your rates and making a new campaign push that pushes people that have a lower rate opportunity for it? How does what you're doing help with that? I mean, you're identifying opportunities forward, but how can you do, would you use it kind of what I'm saying? Like say, okay, these are the things, but also make yourself a mirror of what can happen if it doesn't?
The technology is not built around that thought process, right? Okay. What it's doing is kind of telling you where to keep your eye on. I think from a revenue management standpoint, if I take away my technology hat for a minute, that is always in the back of your mind as an RM. because if something doesn't come to fruition, whether it's during or pre-pandemic, right, the game plan is always going to be something you need to keep your hand on. Example being, Chicago just kind of made an announcement yesterday saying nothing in Q1, Q2, no conventions, nothing happening in 2021. Okay, well, that goes the next 6 months, right? But what Chicago has going for it right now is, there is a drive-in traffic. There are people are driving from other states, generally speaking, for a staycation. I think so. If you look at it from that perspective, what you thought you were going to get is not coming back. What else can you do? And thinking a little bit outside the box may be the answer. But unfortunately, the technology is not built around that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Steph, I know we're having a little conversation in the chat side. Richard Farrar, by the way, one of our guests from times past, is in our chat room with it, who was strong Marriott and so forth. So it kind of connects to a little bit to what we're saying, Jaavid, as to the preemptiveness of what we should be doing and how we're doing. Because as I asked about with Stephanie about the Marriott thing, Richard points out that they go through the cycle of internalization, externalization, and Steph, you're completely dead on. It's like, yeah, until they realize, and Dean, how painful it is to try to think you're going to maintain internal capability with all the needs for adaptability and change. That said, I mean, you're doing stuff with Marriott now, Jaavid, that you say you're talking to them and Hilton as to these things. And we know from what Marriott's doing, they're now creating some sort of internal thing to do. Are those discussions, without defining any confidentiality, are they approaching you with that concept of maybe this is something we want to bring into the integration of what we're trying to do, or are they just still saying you're an external platform that has merit and connectivity?
So we are when I talk about Hilton and Marriott, we are talking about testing connectivity at the property level.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to a scale where we can approach them and say, let's do it from a brand standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The question is always, will the technology work, right? Because if technology is the barrier, then we need to figure out how to work around it. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're trying to figure out the tech part of it, how to get past the two-factor authentication in order to extract data, or in order to extract what we need for data.
Well, thank you. I mean, is there something that we missed out of asking? I mean, is it something that we want to make sure that you wanted to stress or point out or anything like that?
Yeah, I think
that means we want to keep the conversation going. I just want to make sure that we're not missing any angle that you wanted to make sure we discussed.
I think the other piece that we've incorporated in our technology is having the ability to tell the user when they're getting bookings, what day of the week, and what time by the hour they are seeing their volume of bookings come through between 7, 14, 21 days out, right? And we can segment it by day of week, lead time, and that gives you the ability to say, if you're a hotel, I'm just going to pick New York City for example, right? It's a New York City hotel. You see bookings overnight because it's an international marketplace, right? If people are starting to book your hotel at 2 a.m, chances are your RM's not sitting by his computer or her by a computer, changing rates, right? So you need to be able to plan. So what our technology allows you to do is pre-plan when people are already booking you, so you can put your best rates out there. So we've got that capability, and it's very user-friendly from that standpoint.
Excellent. Before we lose track of all this, if people want to find you or know more about the product base itself, where is it that they can go and how can they reach you?
So the website is simply Infinito Solutions, infinito.solutions. No com, no nothing, infinito.solutions. And my email is Jaavid at infinito.solutions.
Excellent.
Or always my cell phone. which is always which doesn't seem to stop lately.
Yeah, I was about to say, you may not want to give that number out. They can reach you on email and you can talk to them later. Because gosh knows when you put a phone number on a website, what you get in the mail. Jaavid, we only asked for a half hour and you gave us a full hour. And if you by all means, if you want to stay longer, we would love for you to have your perspective and insights with us. We know your time is valuable. Like I said, we'd love for you to hang around if you would like, or if there's anything else that pops up that you want to discuss, we'd love to have that as well. But we sincerely appreciate you taking the time with us. Adele, thank you for bringing Jaavid to us and on the show for us. Always, truly excellent. I'm going to spend some time and look at all your website stuff and probably call you or reach out to you and ask some more questions. Anyways, I get a little bit tighter with it. So
Yeah. I'm actually going to hang around. I kind of canceled my next call so I can kind of listen.
excellent, because we're going to go over and save the world and solve crisis problems. And because whenever we have Ben and Tris with us, we already have a different perspective in the world. And then now you add Robert, and now he's that butterfly that creates a hurricane on the other side of the planet. So, because I'm willing to get to what Robert, I'll send you the link. Actually, I'm going to put the link in for the Bitly, Robert, if you don't mind, for your Rockcheetah newsletter.
That's fine.
Because
Please
you
do.
gave us this topic list, but that's almost meaningless compared to the data you put above it in your notes. It's like, oh wow, So I don't think it's going to cut and paste well in the chat. I'm going to do it, but first I'm going to put the link in for your news feed. If you could begin to talk about the highlights you pointed, aka specifically Choice versus Hyatt, just to say.
Well, and Marriott too. So.
Okay, if you want to hit that, I'm going to start dumping some stuff into the chat so that those who are in the chat can see some of this stuff. Because I was starting to look at the numbers the way you're pointing them out, and I'm going, ooh. So yeah, please.
Oh, I don't know. I just did a little, it's earnings season, right? I mean, aside from everyone in the U.S. being distracted by the election, I figured, let's look at some different types of numbers, which would be what's going on with the hotel earnings. And I decided to just throw in a couple of OTAs just so people can kind of see some key metrics of what's happening from an overall perspective. And some of the things that came screaming out, I mean, sorry, I accidentally just closed my file here. Oops. Hang on.
We'll stall for you, Rob.
Yeah, exactly.
Puppets. Yeah.
Can you guys do like a little Monty Python thing? Yeah, a little, like one of those little animated interludes would be perfect right now. So, hang on, because as you're saying, the formatting is important here. So, hang on, because I have the non-formatted version. Basically, when you look at this, Choice's RevPAR for the third quarter was higher than Hyatt's. I think was the one that came screaming out higher than anything. So, but you wind up looking at occupancy percentages. It winds up being rather stunning because you're saying, wow, look at these guys are down in the 30s, 40s. Choice is over 50%, which is fantastic, and everybody's looking at that. But I mean, when you're really looking at RevPAR, that's an eye opener. When you don't necessarily, you look at those profiles of those brand portfolios, you are not expecting Choice to come out with higher RevPAR than certainly a Hyatt. And only $2, basically $2 below Marriott, which is just crazy. And that's the world we're living in. And they're down, 30%, 28.8%. But you look at Hyatt, they're down 72% RevPAR wise. Marriott's down, 66% pretty much.
You see that? I'm putting them up what you're talking about since it's.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's they're just some really interesting numbers, but the other one that I kind of pulled out, which unfortunately I didn't have it for Marriott, was CapEx. And you can see, Hyatt and Hilton have now squeezed their CapEx down, to 13 million, 16 million for the quarter, which is down 83%, 76%. So they aren't putting a bunch of money into developing technologies or whatever. It's, the hatches are battened down. Whereas Choice is actually only down a third. They're spending, more than twice as much as Hyatt is on CapEx, which is pretty amazing. So, but then
Hilton and Hyatt together.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so it's pretty amazing. And unfortunately, I didn't have it for Marriott because they posted their earnings this morning, and I couldn't get into their SEC filing hadn't been posted yet. So. But then you look at what's going on with Booking and Expedia. Oh, their CapEx is 222 million, 145 million, things like that. And Expedia is spending more on their headquarters. That's excluding the headquarters, and they're down maybe 20%, sort of thing. So look what's happening, folks. It's going to it's going to get interesting because at least those large brands who are largely marketing organizations that are trying to channel revenue into hotels, very similar to the business models of the not necessarily the business models, but the same need that the brands need to generate. It's going to get interesting when you cut off all these things and you batten down the hatches, and the other guys are out there still churning away on building their core systems. Watch out.
So when I ask myself the question, what did Choice do that everybody else didn't? The first thing that comes to mind is they're the one brand that had a massive TV campaign last summer. And I'm curious if that is something that led into Q3 and helped reduce the loss year over year in Q3.
I think a lot of it was just structural, right? It's just the profile of the hotels. I mean, the folks at the top, they're still large, and poor Hyatt, right? I mean, you've got these massive, 800 room convention hotels and things like that. Yeah. They're so heavily reliant on group. That's just gone. Where Choice is out there. I think the CEO mentioned that I can't remember what percent of their properties are within a mile of a major highway interchange. Yeah, sort of thing. That's it. It's just like a structural thing. So
you don't have Wyndham data by chance?
I didn't. No.
I'd be curious to see theirs mixed in there too.
They probably did. There was only so much I could kind of fit. But
Robert, come on, you slacking?
There's a back of the envelope thing, right? So anyway, I threw it together in an hour or two. So
we're counting on you.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing was the pipeline, though, which I just find comical at this point, where you look at, it looks like, Choice is going to be adding, another 900 or almost 1,000 properties. It looks like Hilton's going to add 2,600, Hyatt's going to add another 500, and Marriott's going to add almost 3,000. And you're like, really? Okay. So I think your pipeline may be a little leaky. So.
Yeah.
Does that include
Rich is pointing out that
conversions, or is it only new builds?
That's everything. That's everything in the pipeline: conversions, new builds, the whole. That they have contracts. That maybe it's not in the ground, maybe it's in construction, maybe it's suspended. Who knows, right? That's.
Richard points out about the segmentation. You're rolling the brands together, and if you pull out certain brands, they'd probably be a little bit more contrasting to what Choice is doing, like Courtyard and Fairfield Inn and stuff like that.
And all of that is broken out on Marriott's reports, and please feel free to do that analysis.
Yeah, no, but it goes
across Marriott's 30 brands. So
it does go to an earlier conversation we had with another guest co-host, Tracy, where they were talking about their teams developing what would be new hotels, and maybe there's a rethink into maybe channeling that to ownerships related to current hotels reinventing themselves. I mean, how much can an ownership group lean into a brand to break contract? I don't know. Steph, if the brand is falling down in its ability to contribute and produce, that brand value isn't there. Is there legal opportunity for an ownership to go, guys, I'm paying for nothing. I want out. I want to do my own thing.
I've had Marriott kick a hotel out of the brand, but I haven't had an owner ever get out of a franchise contract, no matter.
Well, Service Properties Trust, the REIT, has pulled 200 hotels out of between IHG and Marriott because they were missing their payments. Both groups went delinquent, tried to rework it, saying, "Hey, the world has changed, and we can't really give you what we committed, but you understand." And the REIT said, "We don't understand. We got this piece of paper." And by the way, we own a third of Sonesta. So how convenient! And they've moved them over. Sonesta's tripled their size. So the question on a lot of it is, do you want to get involved in a big fight with Marriott's legal department, and that's or Hilton or whoever, right? Not to pick on Marriott. That's not necessarily so good, but only that situation is if they owe you money. Right? If you owe them money, you're in, right? You've got to stick with it. You signed the deal, and you might get some relief in terms of negotiating some terms. They're certainly softening on PIP programs, and standards are just going out the window. Right, it's all that stuff is softening like crazy.
A couple of things. First, Steph, you're sharing a very famous or currently famous argument that's going on in Phuket as to what Marriott and ownership is trying to do over there.
Yeah.
And then Richard keeps pointing out about relationship repairs and loans. My follow forward, but you are talking about the fact that brand is not being what brand was before because they're no longer hoteliers. They're franchise.
Right.
Or marketing arm, as you said.
Yeah, they own a handful of. I don't think any of the major brands owns more than 30 or 40 hotels, maybe 100 in a couple of cases, but very, very minimal. And even Marriott, I think they manage 2,600 of their 70, 500 hotels or something like that. So yeah,
and I
they're
hope they don't get too lax on the brand. Like I have a love hate with like QA and brand restrictions because you want them.
Yeah.
To make sure that you keep up your standards, but you can't maintain everything. But Hilton started to do their QAs virtually, and I'm like, they had strict QAs, and I'm like, we're gonna do these virtually? What? Really? How's this gonna go down?
That's gonna work really well. Yes,
Yeah.
This is the new room with the new furniture. Now
Yeah.
let's walk over to the new room with the furniture.
well, yeah, and they don't. They're a big problem, and this happens. It doesn't matter if it was 2001 or 2009. They're walking that tightrope because they don't want to be too harsh. Where they go, if you don't do this, you're out of the agreement, and the owners go,
Okay.
right.
Oh no, really? What? I can't keep my agreement. Oh no.
What a shame. But I hope they learned the lesson that she did not learn until it was too late. Laxing too much on brand requirements and maintaining creates a lot of brand dilution that turns into, why do I want to stay at a what hotel? It's not the same. Just because the sign's the same, the product isn't.
Well,
You let it go too much.
Valenperini and I were sending emails back and forth this morning, and she said classic example was she took a trip, down, had a nice long drive from Massachusetts to somewhere in the Southeast. And she said, on the way down, stayed at a hotel. It was spectacular. Same brand. I won't mention it. I won't shame them. I normally do, but what the heck?
Nice.
But went down. Actually, I don't remember which one. It doesn't matter. So, but she went down, stayed at a hotel. Great, spectacularly clean. Everything's perfect. Came back, different property, right? Just horrible. Right. I mean, just the worst. And she's like, this is going to get grim. Right.
Yeah.
So
Richard, which is
that
also
was a problem pre-pandemic. I mean, I think there's still massive inconsistency. I don't think that was necessarily caused by it. I think the bigger problem is the hotels whose value proposition within that brand was food and beverage, whether it's Embassy Suites with their, or whatnot that have the higher F&B. Now it's much more of a flat. So if you couldn't make a differentiation case before, it's even harder now.
Well, the hotels that had the hardest time were the ones that were in a known location that they didn't have any other brand representation. So the brand took a bit of a blind eye as to their maintenance standards because they really wanted to make sure they had a product in that market and they didn't have other product at the time. Where they really start getting tight and demanding constant upgrades is when they have brand dilution and saturation in a market and they can just push everybody around going, hey, if you're not on the latest, greatest, everybody else that has the same flag or similar flag for sister properties are going to get your business because you're not keeping the same vendor stand. And but if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you're the only product out there, they tend to be like, yeah, sure, it's okay to have a cow walk through the hallway. It's fine.
Well, and that was the situation with the service, the SPT properties. Once they start going delinquent, that wasn't like an oversight. They looked at that. They knew the calculations. They're going, we're going to lose 100 properties. A lot of them were good long-term stay properties, things like that. But they're making the calculation. Do we give them $11 million of cash that we owe them, or do we lose the 100 properties? Right. And
it's triage. It's right now.
Absolutely.
And everybody else is in triage right now. Who lives, who doesn't, and what do we keep and what do we don't? I mean, New York is. I mean, Jaavid, you probably talked to this more directly, or Adele, really. There's vultures out there right now that are picking up properties for a song simply by taking on a percentage of the debt and allowing the hotel to exist the bank just wants somebody to make sure the keys are in the front door to keep it open. They don't. They're letting who was it? Ashford lost some. There was a few properties
It's
that
all over, and the money is still all on the sidelines. Nothing has happened yet. Just wait. It's when things get bad. Yeah, let's go through the first. Let's finish off the first quarter and see how things are going. Then there are a bunch of folks on the sidelines with SPACs and things like that that are going to come in and just be bottom feeding like crazy. The interesting thing is there's so much money on the sidelines, though. Is that going to have bidding wars to get these prices up? I don't know. It's going to be interesting how all this works out.
I think there's going to be so much inventory on market. I think it's still. I don't think it's going to.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody walks over and starts competing too high, they're going to be like, "Yeah, go ahead, you take it. I'll go."
Oh
over
yeah,
here and
yeah. Everybody will have. They'll have their number, right? And
Yeah,
but who knows?
It should be interesting. Well,
Oh yeah.
nice and happy there. Good. Let's pick something better to talk about. Robert, since you gave us a wonderfully curated list, and Les, Ben, and Tris came with something from across the pond that was show and tell, that they want to talk about the happiness of living in a wonderful in lockdown again.
We can count quicker.
From New Guinea.
What? From New Guinea.
Hello.
G'day, sport.
The only reason that the election's quicker in England than the US is it's a lot smaller, my friend.
Okay.
So,
hang on a second.
I'm defending the US.
I don't know what's going on here. Come on.
You should hand your passport in, Butler.
Yeah. Not anymore. What's going on?
Yeah, you can imagine how they're reporting it over here. It's like a reality TV show that you sort of wish wasn't reality. We're getting minute by minute updates on it.
Yeah, all too true. All too true.
But it'll be our turn in 1,000 days, and you can laugh at us instead.
Well, I mean, just from a pragmatic point of view, between now and the end of the year, regardless of anything that happens in the next couple of days or today even, we're dealing with a very interesting holiday period because you have this mixed messaging that's going on. Black Friday doesn't exist per se from a retail perspective. Cyber Monday doesn't exist per se in a historical value that it used to, because everybody's front loading all of their offers and opportunities from a sales perspective. Hotels, following the pattern of retail, are already in market with what they're thinking is rates that they're trying to pitch for people to do whatever they're going to do for the holiday season. But then again, what is the holiday season? Are you really going to go to grandma's house for Thanksgiving in the U.S.? Are you really going to go over and get together with family in Christmas? If you're, in you guys' cases, you can't even have that as a choice. You can't go travel somewhere, period. Done. Can't do it. And so, what happens then, and goes back to Jaavid, what we said before, how does that get calculated in to say, I got a hotel, I got rooms, who's still able to get in a car and go somewhere or ride the train or whatever through the period of time? I mean, Myrtle Beach is just going to do whatever they do because they don't wear masks anyway, but,
That's not true. We're very masked here. I will say in general, though, I mean, if you look at Labor Day weekend as an example, Americans are willing to travel. There is not an apprehension that there was maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I think anecdotally, everyone I know is doing maybe a slightly revised version of Thanksgiving, but they're getting together with family. I don't think people aren't going to travel, aren't going to go see family for Thanksgiving. I think that's going to happen, but probably slightly modified, slightly safer in some cases. But a lot of people forgot there's a pandemic going on, so we'll see.
Well, and another thing there also, at least in our part of town, in the Chicago area, if the weather holds true, you can still have a decent family gathering outdoors and have that event, right? Mm-hmm. Again, it may not be the traditional, 50 people under the same roof type of deal, but you can still gather relatively safely.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it'll be in small pods. Like if I look anecdotally again at a sample size of one, my family or my wife's family, typically we would get together with multiple combined families. There'd be like 100 people at a church hall, and they'd all get together. This year, each of the smaller families are getting together on their own. Right? They're not doing one massive event. They're doing 5 or 10 smaller events.
So, Stuart, how do you know so much about travelers' sentiment and interest? I mean,
we've asked a few questions. I think last tally we we were over 60,000 total survey responses over a 30-week period. So it's probably the most comprehensive longitudinal travel study that exists out there. I haven't seen any larger. So yeah, we've learned a thing or two. Majority of people have traveled. The majority of people want to continue to travel. Majority of people are scared, but you can mitigate the risk and eliminate the fear. So yeah, I think travel's looking good in general. I mean, obviously it has challenges. It's not ideal, but I think considering where we have been, I think we've got a lot of positivity in front of us.
Absolutely. Everybody's just got fear fatigue. Everyone is just worn out of being scared, and the longer something goes on for, the less people start to give a toss about it. So I think we're seeing
Fear
a
in
lot
general
of
is something that erodes over time, right? You don't. It doesn't tend to exacerbate itself. It doesn't tend to get worse. It tends to diminish over time, and especially as you dip your toe in and do things.
This lockdown is exactly the same. It is nowhere near as impactful as the first lockdown. They're actually, the conditions that they've put on it over here in the UK are not the same as well. So apparently, I was speaking to somebody who was saying that you can still hold a business meeting of up to 30 people during lockdown right now, because business is still allowed to continue. It's obviously got to be socially distanced, but it's still indoors. And I'm like, well, you know, the schools are still open, whereas previously they weren't. I can see a big notice to change. Sorry, Ben.
I don't know if you guys saw the notice. There was Dean. There's a chap over here. The lockdown rules came in, and he said, "Look, you can't have your family around to your house. Nobody's allowed to come to your house. You can't meet anybody indoors, but you can have business meetings." So this one guy registered a company in his own name and employed his family on 0 hours contracts. And
started then, isn't it?
And said on Christmas Day, we're having a business meeting at my house.
Board meeting.
Yes.
So how old are your cousin these days, Ben?
That means that the turkey's tax deductible. That's great. You can run it.
Always thinking, Stuart. Always thinking.
Genius. Absolute genius. Yeah.
Well, now I have another potential question. I don't know if it's getting asked by anybody, and in general mainstream, is how many people are not going to take advantage of holiday time or can't because they're, like we said earlier on, revenue managers are doing way more than sitting behind a desk calculating things. They're behind a front desk, they're turning tables. Who knows what else everybody's doing, you know, to justify their weekly paycheck.
I think it depends on the industry, to be honest, Lauren. If you've been on furlough for the last 7 months, the last thing you want is to take 3 weeks off over Christmas to spend it with your family. I think some people are probably rather.
It takes 3 weeks, Ben. Nobody.
Sorry, you're right. If you want to take 30 seconds and
European,
some
make
time off,
it crazy vacation time.
All is said the same. Yes, I think the impact's going to be the same because for those who have a job, they're thankful to have it. They're least likely to say, "Hey, I want to take off any chunk of time," because that might put them in jeopardy of, you know, their boss saying, "Well, if you're willing, you know, I need you here. And if you're not going to, I'll pick up another person that's standing outside the door waiting to get a job." I think to some degree, but I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Another thing that happens when we start.
Look at every industry. You look at all the people that are still working remotely. There'll be a lot more people able to travel for a longer period over the holidays and stay at their parents' house or somewhere else while they're working remotely.
Another thing that starts to happen too that I learned earlier this week. Actually, I was talking with a gentleman with our city's economic development board, and he was talking about how, of course, hotel revenue, hotel taxes, and luxury taxes are all down significantly, to be expected. But I'm in a small town. I refer to myself as being in Omaha, Nebraska, because nobody knows where Norfolk, Nebraska is. Okay, but it's a little town up in northeast Nebraska. And one of the things that has happened is that although our sales, our revenue from the hotel industry is down, as you would expect, the city taxes that they're getting off of sales tax are up exponentially. And the reason being that people are doing all this online shopping. Well, we're in a community that doesn't have a Best Buy, that doesn't have a Shields or any of these big box stores, right? Now, all of a sudden, guess what? We're getting sales tax revenue from Best Buy because people are buying this stuff. And so that has been actually helping our community significantly.
Stuart, you're like the guy after The Life of Brian. Look to the bright side of life.
I used to have a T-shirt that said that. That was kind of my mantra for a while. Yeah.
But it's true, yes, to the point that if you don't have a job to worry about necessarily over holidays, you can actually travel more. Robert, you're waving your hand. Why are you waving your hand? I can't hear you.
It's because he's doing mine.
Mine, yes.
Yeah.
Mine.
You know what? It's been a while since he's been on the show. I think back at the time it was there weren't talkies, right? With the black and white. He's about to hold up a sign with the words narrating what he's
he's writing.
Stuart just sticks the knife in. Look at that.
You can write. Yeah, I think Charlie Chaplin was on the last show that Robert was on.
Robert, try it again. Nope. First word. Sounds like.
Nope. Good job we can't lip read.
You probably haven't used that microphone headset for a year. It's probably broken.
I think Adele can.
Gotten out to internet. It's okay.
Is this the guy that's doing connectivity for the whole industry?
Let's not bring that up.
I want to lay the foundation for a lot of the connectivity of the whole industry. That's barely true. Some of the companies he worked for were integral to the GDS and stuff.
He's their technological advisor.
Robert, if you can hear us, I wanted to ask you before you go anywhere, what is property number 1? Type it in the chat menu.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just brutal.
So I think, Robert, he's asking what's the first property that's going to be integrated?
Yeah.
Oh, there's Robert. Well, give me a second, guys. I'm just going to.
It's going to be a big algorithm. There won't be a one, will there? There won't be.
No. But I actually am going to something that Robert did point out while he figures out what's going on in tech. Is you look at what's shifting in Vegas. It's just headlines in the sense that it's like announcing, hey, by the way, they're thinking about selling the Venetian or MGM's doing this. That's some big moving and shaking going on. Those are no small things.
Mm-hmm.
For that kind of migration of not just inventory and assets, but just whole shifting of who has control, because it really is control of an ecosystem as to who's going to be calling the shots in that kind of play. Because we know that Orlando runs that way to a certain degree, but Vegas is its own world. I mean, they don't run by everybody else's rules. They don't do the same reporting everybody else has done because but they're reporting they don't compare themselves to anybody. Only recently have been some Asian markets that are comparable to what Las Vegas does, but nothing that if they change the changing of the guard the way they're looking at it, that's going to fundamentally change how business is being done in Vegas.
Well, I mean, there's lots of big news of changes and shaking and things that we were talking about there. I mean, Vegas aside, there was an article came out yesterday that the much anticipated Airbnb IPO looks like it's finally going to happen. So it looks like they've got it on reliable sources. They're going to file next week, which means that they will go. They'll set to kick their IPO off at the end of December. It will make them the biggest IPO of 2020 if it all goes to plan. So they've got a likely valuation of about $30 billion, and they're looking to raise around $3 billion from the capital raise, which is just monstrous when you think about it.
And I mean, I know Stuart loves talking about this, but this is from a business perspective of it. There's an article floating out with Max these days where he's asking do you think how is the IPO going to affect hospitality? And at first I was thinking why would it? But then again, I also retracted that thought by thinking whenever you go public, now the whole focus of the company has changed.
Yeah.
And now it's about what are you going to be doing to be competitive to, basically provide value to your stockholders at that point. We saw every company once they went public change Facebook, all that. So does it make it more aggressive from a marketing perspective? Does it make it more, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it has a massive impact on their business because they're going to now be beholden to different stakeholders who really are demanding excessive growth, right? Wall Street doesn't really worry about profitability as much anymore as it does expansion. That's how stock prices seem to be valued right now. So they're going to have to diversify their portfolio. They're going to have to find new revenue streams. But I do think on the flip side, it's pretty smart for them. I always whine about when we talk about Airbnb on the show, but it's not anything against Airbnb. I admire what they've done. They've pivoted so many times and been really successful. There's still a swath of consumer out there that still sees it as I don't think I want to try that. That's not for. There's still this. I'm dealing with some faceless organization, and I'm dealing with a regular person. I'm renting directly from a person. I wonder what psychological impact this has from a promotion and marketing perspective when they're now a big public company. It could be similar to Uber. Uber saw a big jump in participation when they went public. And I'm wondering if we're going to see the same thing here with Airbnb, where some consumers now say, oh, this is a more legitimate proposition and I'm going to try it. And I've never tried it before. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think they've already been fairly aggressive, because if you look at the sheer volume of venture capital that they've had injected into them, I mean, that type of money doesn't come without huge amounts of pressure.
I don't think average consumer sees that, right? We see it because we're in the industry. When they go public, I think it's a game changer from a consumer perspective, because the mainstream media will be talking about it. Mainstream media, the CNN hasn't really been talking about people putting venture capital into Airbnb. They will be talking about it going public, and so it changes where it sits in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, I get that, but I still think with the sheer volume of money that they've had, they have been aggressive in their marketing strategies. Whether that's, like you say, maybe not quite getting in the mainstream media, but they're still, I mean, if I look at here, Series F in March 2017 was 448 million. And in September 2006, it was 555 million. And it just goes down. June 2015, 1.5 billion. The amount of money that they've had pumped into them has not been small.
I mean, they're massive. But I think once they start getting exposure on the Today Show and Good Morning America and stuff like that hits, the soccer moms and just the average consumer that isn't in travel, I think it changes their perception completely.
Just the US as well, because Airbnb is global. Obviously it's over here in Europe, and if they're managing to get as much traction, I think what makes them a little bit more worrisome, not worrisome, I think worrisome from the hotel point of view, but also interesting from an investor point of view, is that it might actually, see you later, Ben. It might actually get them more people signing up to actually, you could rent your room out. That was the idea. It was a platform to actually get some money for your spare bedroom. And who knows, other people might actually see this as a business venture, something that they can actually go and get into, which previously may not have thought about it.
Yeah.
And that becomes, again, more dangerous for the hotel world.
Well, one
I don't know
aspect
if you guys can hear me now.
We'll pretend like we can't hear.
I know hey, that new feature they have on this platform on live webinar where you can remotely mute, Lauren, works really effectively. So.
We call it the editing on button. We have to install.
That's right. One thing though is if you look at the Net Promoter Score though for Airbnb, it's pretty strong. I mean, this is last year. I don't know what it is now in 2020, but in 2019 it was a 74. I mean, Starbucks is 77, Netflix is 68, Amazon 62. I mean, now Tesla's 96, which is Tesla's just crazy, right?
They have a small group of fanatical consumers.
Absolutely, yeah, much smaller. But for Airbnb, it's 74 to be kind of in the Starbucks, above Netflix, above Amazon. That's going to be, that will put some wind in your sails. So I think the IPO will get a lot, kind of legitimizes it, right? Because before it was kind of like, well, here's something you can stand people have, but now all of a sudden it's in a stock market and it looks more real. Right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's also some other factors at play that none of California, because of all what's going on, hasn't really pointed out the fact that they legitimized Uber, not having to pay their employees as employees.
That was really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's going to have a really big ripple into this economy of I don't have to actually pay people for the work. I mean, Florida endorsed the minimum wage going up and what have you, which is just token effort towards a problem that's not being solved by it. But at least it's a positive direction. But that not saying that Uber drivers are employees that need to be paid or given opportunities as employees is a pretty strong legitimizer for other entities within that consumer economy to have. You know, I don't have to pay you. I'm just going to make you do stuff.
It's going to overflow to everything. Hotels will be embracing that aggressively.
It gives
Absolutely.
businesses permission to exploit employees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is not good for workforce in the long run.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
really. The answer, though, was actually to go to three different things. Because you have a W-2 employee, right? You got a 1099 employee, and you really needed something kind of between those for contract. Because again, the platform sets the pricing and dictates everything, right? It isn't an independent contractor who goes, well, I want to take this. Yes, you can take the trip or not, but you can't vary the price of your trip, right? It's not the same thing at all. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
We've heard the last of that.
And that's complex to do. So that's not going to happen anymore. Right. It's So everything's going to shift to 1099. It's like health insurance. No, we don't need to add 30% to our cost structure. Yeah. Fend for yourself sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Did anyone else find that article interesting when they made a comment about, what Airbnb has been doing during the pandemic, and they said they're going to be rolling out requirements like sanitization requirements on November 20th. I'm like,
I thought they already have. No,
Well, they've done some, right? But they're doing stricter ones November 20th. I'm like, that's 40 weeks after the pandemic really started in North America. It seems like it's a little bit, the horse is bolted and you're closing the barn door a little bit.
I think they were relying on the reviews, and the host, at least on the platform, could say, here are our cleaning protocols and laid out so you could kind of go, oh, here's what they're doing. Now, are they actually doing it or not? I don't know, but you could wind up, hammering them with negative reviews. But I think they were relying on that. I think it's IPO related, right? Again, it's just like, here's the strict, they're growing up and they're like, okay, you know what, this is going to make sense to put that in. We don't want something to be someone gets sick or Airbnbs or, hives for COVID or something. Well, that was why I put that top article as no, I couldn't really hear because I was off for a while. Did you guys? That's why I put the top article. Is it safe to stay in a hotel? That was from the Associated Press, right? And they kind of said, go to short-term rentals. Hotels are dangerous, which is
I wish
not good.
I wish the big lobbying groups were doing more, and especially the ones that have budget for PR. AHLA and AHOA and folks like that. I wish we'd been ahead of this before, saying the hotels are safe, that travel is safe, responsible travel is fine. Because even that article was kind of one side. It was like, oh, it's better to stay in a beach house or a vacation rental. But then in a little bit at the bottom, it was like, but there's no evidence that you're at high risk in a hotel.
Right.
There isn't any evidence that people are contracting in hotels.
That
Lauren, would be what we're shouting from the rooftops.
Lauren, I wish we had done a webinar with those guys like in March, with the heads of those associations, and when we warned them that this is going to be serious, and they're like, no, this is just going to pass. It's going to go pretty quick. Wish that could have happened.
We also have a responsibility to promote the fact that travel is safe. The responsible travel is safe. We all need to be
absolutely safe. And I think that's the point we made in March was if people don't feel safe traveling, they won't travel, and you have to fix that first.
The perception of
RevPAR is an outcome. It's an outcome. It's not an input. Sort of thing. You've got to get the public safety thing done.
Now, does your microphone work yet? No, it's got no audio. Well, I do want to point out one thing to it, and I'm not trying to bash associations at this point, but by inherent nature, the associations follow whoever's treating them nicely, and I feel like AHOA and HLA have kind of landed on the wrong foot because they were trying to, by getting what they wanted at the short term, they were endorsing or sharing or collaborating or supporting aspects of the people that they get the monies from, and then when that dried up, they really didn't push for really keeping core the industry. They were just looking for their next best friend, and they didn't find a new next best friend, and we unfortunately haven't really helped our industry per se because they didn't take the banner to the point that we said earlier and said things like we're talking about right now. It is safe if you make it safe. It can be what you need it to be if you take the precautions you need to take to make you feel like it's a safe environment. You can't just wag a finger and say Hilton says we're doing Lysol stuff now. Every Hilton's safe. It's not. Brand doesn't follow through consistently, and you know, now airplanes are trying to show off. We have multi-filtration. Here's all these studies we're doing to show you that when somebody sneezes in aisle 12, it doesn't hit aisle 1, and so forth. And so they're trying to prove all this stuff, where at the end of the day, it's about, if you're wanting to travel, you can travel. You can do it safely, but by the same token, what safe means to you is entirely different from what safe means to me. And from a medical perspective, some people just don't have that option. They really can't put themselves into that troublesome way because it puts too much risk, regardless of their safety
Sure,
profile.
right? It comes down to individual decision making, but we all take risks every day in every decision we make. And I think we as an industry have not done a good enough job painting a picture that is pro travel. Right? I think we've allowed other narratives to take hold. We let the mainstream media, especially right before 4th of July, would call in places cesspools of COVID and really focusing on locations being these disgusting areas where everyone's catching COVID. And when you really drilled down and looked at it, it was irresponsible behavior from a few individuals that was creating problems. And we really haven't rectified that narrative. We haven't gone back and said, here are the actual numbers. Here's how many people have actually contracted COVID on a plane. And they weren't wearing a mask, you know, and here's, if you wear a mask, what the statistics are. Here's what your risk factors are in a hotel. But instead we get fluff pieces like this one where it's like, some expert who is an expert on diseases says, "Oh, hotels should probably do a 72-hour gap between stays."
Right.
Well,
And you don't need 72 hours because everything that I've read, the disease does not exist well on these surfaces, right?
No.
So, but you could argue that, yeah, if somebody's checking out at 2 p.m. and coming in at 4 p.m., maybe that's not so great, and maybe you should clean the room properly, which should have been happening before the pandemic anyway.
I wouldn't even contest, Robert. I'd even contested that we're looking at one thing compared to all things.
Oh,
and
yeah.
back to the old economic classes. If you could make everything else constant, you could look at this one variable, and that's never true.
Oh, no.
There's airborne versus surface. Remember the guy that we used to
Right.
giggle about when we said poop, and we all laughed.
I was just about to say, we're getting close to biofilm, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right, we're getting close to biofilm.
Yeah.
But the idea of it is that there's more components to this process other than just us selecting surface contact conversions and airbornes and so forth. It is being informed well enough to not politicize the wearing of protection versus non-wearing protection. What we do, whether it's 2 hours gap between the room, I honestly would feel that if you went over and told me you threw open the windows and blew out air in the room 15 minutes after somebody left it, I'd be okay.
Oh, it's just having those processes which are saying, here's what we do, right? And these are the standards, and we abide by them. And by God, we are focused on it because our job is to protect you, protect our employees, make sure it's great. Those are table stakes, right? But that's not what's getting communicated. You're getting the major hotel brands. There's a little banner, and it says, click on this about our COVID stuff. And it links you off literally. And I'll pick on Marriott because they haven't changed this. And yeah, it's ridiculous. You're trying to look for a hotel in Key West. You click on that and you go to the governor of Florida's website, which it's not even a landing page having anything to do with COVID. It's insane.
Or you get publicity stunts where they partner with Lysol because there's a brand associated with cleanliness.
Right.
What does that do to protect?
You've got to look at this in context as well. COVID has come along, and the information that we're talking about is with the clarity of 2020 hindsight that we've got at the moment. You can see everything that's happened in the past. Yeah. During the time, it was changing that much. First it was you can catch it by touching things. Well, actually, no, you can, but it took a while for this to come out. Or if you can catch it by touching, it's very unlikely, or whatever. And you'd still have people arguing that red was blue and blue was green, and God knows what else. When you've got organisations the size of Marriott, they cannot change their policies quick enough. It's not. It's the same with Airbnb. This is a perfect storm for them, where they're just geared up for failure from the get. because they
Well,
could.
they're devastated because they laid so many people off.
Yeah, then I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, you factor that in. You know, there's not a cat in hell's chance that the hospitality industry was ever going to succeed at this if we were looking to the big boys, who are the only ones who've got the political clout to be able to go out to like CNN and challenge some of them.
That's why we have these organizations that are supposed to support lobbying and things like that. That's why they exist is to be a voice for the small guy. And I just haven't felt.
But that wasn't their messaging. Their messaging was give us money, de-risk our industry. Right? Look at you're de-risking the airline industry, de-risk our industry. Right?
Yeah.
So,
which was important and necessary for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah.
But we could have. But that was done in the first 4 weeks.
Yeah.
What's happened in the last 30 weeks?
Self-preservation.
Yeah, but you should have earlier.
well, and a lot of these associations are not necessarily H&LA. H&LA is very, very well funded. I'm not sure about AHOA, but a lot of these associations aren't going to make it, depending on what their ratio of revenues are. Right? If they're getting 80% of their revenues from conferences, and those aren't happening anymore, that's not a good scenario. So, yeah, and a lot of companies who are then evaluating, gee, should we keep paying the memberships because that's going to be another drag on it. So, yeah, but H&LA is okay because I mean their mission is to lobby and things and they're connected to the major hotel groups and things like that, and that's fine. I mean there's that whole legislative agenda that's not going to be problems, but a lot of other groups are going to have real issues.
Dean, go ahead. Remember, sure, bro, Joe's.
I saw this article earlier this week, and I can't remember which hotel chain it was actually, and I probably could have mentioned them if I did anyway. That's all right. So, but they were doing something where for an extra fee that you could ask the hotel, they'd send this little robot in basically with UV light, and they would UV treat the whole room. But it would cost you extra to do that. Mind you couldn't prove if they actually did it or not. You wouldn't have any idea. But so let's assume that is effective, that it works, that it does something. Would consumers be willing to pay extra for something like that?
Some will, of course. There's always going to be somebody that will pay, for safety or whatever. There will always be a market for that, and I'm surprised there hasn't been more opportunistic people trying to capitalize on it. Personally, I think it's suicide.
I have an answer to that, which is kind of funny. A friend of mine tried to step into the space of doing that for medical offices and places where they would go in and do extra sanitation so that some higher risk patients would feel better about coming to the doctor's offices. And the thing that threw it away, and this is typically American, is the doctor's offices realized that they couldn't be liable for somebody catching COVID.
Absolutely.
Prove it. So what the F do we care? Because I can't get nailed with it. And so they didn't care about it. They didn't care about getting extra clean because at the end of the day, they couldn't get sued for it.
Yeah, but even if you care about it, even if, like Robert said a minute ago, our job in hospitality, our first priority is to ensure the safety of our guests and our staff, right? That's the stakes to the table, as he said.
So can you monetize it though? Is there a monetary value?
But here's the problem, right? I'm going to channel my inner Tim, as I often do. He often says, when you invent the ship, you invent the shipwreck. There's a massive shipwreck that happens when you create that ship, right? And that is, you're now creating a clean room and a non-clean room, or a dirty room. So now you're making people, you're turning a swath of people off, I think, by doing that.
But you know what? We've been living with that a whole long time because I have the deluxe suite versus I got the one by the.
No, that's different.
You're not. The deluxe suite isn't cleaner. It has more physical.
Yeah, but it's more than what I'm getting. At the end of the day,
the number one,
a smaller bed or a better view, and that's something. I'm not going to choose based on finances how safe I'm going to be in a room. I think that's a bad.
But people do that being on first floor, being on the third floor. I don't want to be on the ground floor because somebody can break in my window. That's
number one thing, and we just did a study on this with Focusrite. Number one thing is cleanliness. Number two thing is hot water. Number three thing, which is closer to those two than you might imagine, but it's kind of understandable, is quality internet.
Yeah.
Thing, right? Those you have to have. It has to be clean. right?
So windows are optional then.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Beds.
So what if
Young beds in hotels.
doesn't matter. Yeah, well, and I wanted to drill down. We didn't really have the thing in the site. It's like, would you? How much cleanliness would you trade for quality internet? Sort of thing.
Jaavid, I
How
told you
hot
about
does
the-
water? Are you going to trade 90-degree water, or does it have to be 85? What's the limit
I'll have
versus
a
quality
first
internet?
class study room. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Jaavid, I
better.
told you about the sharp elbows
Oh.
after you get past the guest phase, just so you
But-
know.
But
No,
tying
listening,
into this
and this is
research,
all good stuff. I'm listening, and this is all stuff we experience at the hotel level, right? Because I think it was Stuart or maybe Robert said, all of this stuff boils down to staffing, right? AHLA, AHOA, everybody can say we need to do this, but if you don't have the staff, you got two people cleaning, 12-story building. It's not happening.
or the
No matter
training,
how-
or the training, or the supervision of it,
Right.
right? To
Or-
make
or
sure
that,
that
right?
it's
Or you have a
it
robot
is being
doing it.
executed.
Or where's the check and balance that it's happening?
Yeah.
And
But
that's
yeah,
not
it didn't happen.
that's not the point either. I mean, that doesn't happen either. And so I follow all the AHOA and all the conversations. And for the last few weeks, I mean, there was a time where they were talking about cleanliness, but I would almost say in the last 12 to 18 weeks, I haven't seen a thing about cleanliness. It's all been about
behind walls.
funding, or
Right. Yep.
supporting funding in some way, and to take it to the next step. All of these members within the AHOA family or membership are, trying to go to the brand and say, don't charge us these fees, right? So there is a lot of infighting going on between franchisor at this point, because the brands can't service or give the full service that they had talked about pre-COVID, and the hotels can't pay these fees during COVID. So who's right? What position stands true?
But again,
Yeah.
when you look at the funding they're looking at, if you look at the airline industry, I mean, what the airline industry was asking Congress for, which looked like it was going to get passed for a little while, but it didn't. It wound up being $9,000 per employee or something like that. Or no, was it nine? No, it wasn't 9,000. It was like 90,000 per employee, because they were saving 13,000 or 30,000 jobs or whatever with the big billions of dollars. That was crazy. Or $100 per passenger. Right, when you kind of looked at this time frame for it, you go, wow, that's a lot of subsidy going on this. So yeah, there's some crazy stuff. The thing that came out of this research study, though, because I talked to a lot of the brands and the REITs and the management companies and tech groups and things like that, one of the ownership organizations, I won't be more specific because this is all highly non-disclosed, basically said that the pandemic is having them look at, do they taking Dean's thing of how do you monetize this to the nth degree, can they now charge for housekeeping to be optional, right? Because they're trained people, because of COVID, we aren't going to have housekeepers in the room for your safety. Kind of the same as we're going to put the little piece of paper.
Not do it.
No. We're going to put the little thing on the pillow to say, gee, do you want your sheets changed for, basically to save the environment, right? Same sort of disingenuous, situation. But they're basically going to say, oh no, we aren't going to do it. And when they bring it back, they're like, we are really evaluating, can we charge people to get housekeeping during their stay, right? Is that a revenue opportunity on top of the resort fee, on top of the everything else, right? And you just go,
which is different. It's saying that room's not clean, right? It's saying you're not getting a specific tangible service during your stay. If I could save a few bucks and not have someone come in and make the bed,
right?
I would do that every stay unless I'm staying with my family. Right? If I'm staying with my family, my wife is going to want that.
Yeah,
I'm never going to want it. So,
but boy, talk about extending out your cleaning times for turnover. Yeah. That's going to be very interesting. Those rooms are going to get trashed out.
Going back to the association conversation real quick, just before we kind of wrap things up, is they've started to learn how to monetize. Jaavid, as you pointed out, all that cleanliness content that was supposed to be helpful to the industry is now behind a paywall.
Right.
If you want to know how we're telling you how to do this and what should be done in best practices, you have to be a paying member of us to get that access.
Which I think is fine. I think
that's okay.
I think there was a time in COVID where we were all in the same boat, right? And we had to support each other I think we're now, and Ed's used this phrase before, we're in the same ocean, but we're in different boats, and we've got to look out for ourselves. And at the end of the day, if they can't be solvent, if they're not in existence a year from now, that hurts the industry.
Right.
So they've got to do what they can to survive. And if that means making a profit from content, I think that's fine.
And it better be
Now-
good. It better be good, valuable content.
Yeah,
and not
that's
just the
the-
links
that's
to a
the
bunch of
market
published
research.
articles, right?
Because right
Well,
now,
marketing-
I'm not seeing that. I'm not
No.
seeing valuable content that I need to pay for.
You're not the consumer, Lauren. You know, you're not
the
the.
other associations. I would say yes, I am that consumer. I need to know that I have
No.
value to it.
You don't own and operate hotels, and you're a lot more
That's true, but I do recommend to those that they
hotel
should. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I got to be played into in that conversation a little bit.
Yeah, but if you look, well, I've got 45,000 members. Maybe 5% look like you. The other 95% are people that don't understand marketing fully. You know, they're just focused on the hotel, running the hotel, and this is information that will help them do a better job of that.
True, but then again,
those-
so people also ask us, people, do you think it's worth it? And if I don't think it's worth it, then how
You
likely are
don't
they?
renew, right? And then they figure that out. That's what free market does.
I think that they're missing the mark on some of their content. That's pretty much, regardless of whether I'm that person they're selling it to or not. I think they're missing the mark on a lot of it. I think
Lauren,
they're
unless
struggling
you're
to find
delivering
the
the content, everyone is missing the mark because you're a genius.
No, well, no.
Wait. Did you
Taking
say he
the
was a
close
genius or he was associated with a genus?
Yeah, I think the other one is more accurate. I think the other one's more accurate.
Or he's wearing jeans. Maybe that.
Yes. All right. Well, we're at 2 hour mark.
Well, can we talk about Google real quick?
Yeah.
Sure.
Google Analytics. So, because I want to do a shameless plug because I haven't done one yet. This is a podcast. So today's episode that we're going to be recording today, publishing next week of the Fuel Hotel Marketing Podcast is going to be on the new Google Analytics. Google Analytics 4 that's just being rolled out. Now, folks that have been paying attention will already be experienced with this, but this is a fundamental change for how Google Analytics works. If anyone's been familiar with how Adobe Analytics works, it's event-driven, it's not session-based. This new version is a lot more like Adobe Analytics. It is phenomenal in terms of what we're going to be able to track. However, it will require every single website on the entire internet to redo their analytics. Now, current analytics is not going away. Universal Analytics is not going away. This is a new one that will eventually replace it. There's no timeline on that now. But the folks that want to take advantage of this, it's still sort of beta-y. It's got some issues that are still getting baked out and it's getting expanded. Some of the reports are lacking. But I would talk to your web team today about getting Google Analytics 4 beginning to get implemented on your website.
Actually, I called Stuart up last week going, what the heck just happened with Google? Because how long then I was like, wait a minute, what's this dashboard? So yeah, I was one of those people going, and then I was asking him about, GTM, and GTM is going to be turned all around differently. The data layering that exists now is going to be changed to different data layering. Yeah, crazy stuff. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a fundamental rethink. And the greatest thing of all, and this article pointed it out, is people are going to stop obsessing about the most stupid KPI in the industry, in any industry, is the bounce rate. People are so obsessed with bounce rates on their websites, and that will go away.
See, I was thinking about impressions. I'm sorry. I think that as soon as we get off of this, how many people I flashed in front of, I think would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool. Well, with that in mind, Mr. Robert, it is a rare pleasure to have you on the show today. If people want to know more about you, Rock Cheetah, and the mysterious Illuminati stuff that you do.
Wait, you guys don't? Yeah, see, you don't cover the boop or the rut row. We don't have to cover the rut. The rut row. The rut row had to do with the UK anyway, and we've lost Ben and Trish.
We lost our UK contingency.
Forget that. Yeah, forget that. But the boop was very, very good. It's the top 50 bars in the world. Come on. That's
Okay.
And that actually looking at the analytics and MailChimp, that is the most clicked on article.
I think a lot of people are looking for good news and bars, all in that kind of combination. So yes. But if they do want to find you, Mr. Robert,
You can find me on social media at Robert K. Cole or rockcheetah.com, or to subscribe to the newsletter, it's just bit.ly/rockcheetah, all lowercase.
Excellent. Mr. Dean, for those that want to know everything meta search and what it is that you're doing, where can they find you, sir?
metasearchmarketing.com and or basecampmeta.com, or look me up on LinkedIn under Dean Schmidt.
And you have another
And
podcast.
Dean, you still doing the end of year promotion?
Sure, I'll plug that in there. So, hey, by the way, one of the things that we're doing is working on a way for small hotels to get live on Google Meta. Big brands and everybody, they've got their tech stacks, they do all that fancy stuff and budgets kind of to do it. Small hotels don't. Well, we figured out a way to make that happen. Where I'm leading with that is, if you're interested, reach out to me, because we can get you set up on Google Meta for free through the end of the year. By free, I mean free, as in no setup, no monthly, no marketing. Come January 1st, we decide if we want to keep on doing it.
Okay. Stuart, for your award-winning podcast, and I believe that you are now a current top 25 contendee, just saying, for HSMAI's top 25 award. Let's make sure they're smart enough to realize that. Fuel Travel?
Fueltravel.com is the mothership, fueltravel.com/podcast. Or if you just search for hotel marketing on any podcast platform, we will be number one. And you can listen to 169, soon to be 169. I'm publishing one today. That'll be the 169th episode. So what did we talk about? I can't remember what we talked about last week. Oh, it was converting after the conversion. So the fact that you've got a booking doesn't mean that your job is done, because cancellation rates are so high in the industry. What can you do to mitigate the risk of losing the booking after the booking? So that will get published later today. And then, like I said, we're going to be doing one on Google Analytics 4 published next week. So fueltravel.com/podcast.
Awesome. Jaavid, thank you, one, for being with us at the beginning and describing what it is that Infinito is doing, but also staying us this long and putting up with our contentiousness as we go through the parade of stuff. Once again, I should say, if people want to know more about you, reach out to you and or know more about what you're doing, where is it they can find you?
So they can find me at Jaavid at infinito.solutions.com. Our website is infinito.solutions.
Excellent.
Pretty simple.
I will be doing my podcast today, which will have a minor recap as to the show today, which should be fun. Also, I'm throwing in some new tools and stuff as usual. But if you would like to have a replay of this or any previous 273 episodes of This Week in Hospitality Marketing, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live and look for show number 273. And we will be recasting this out as we always do each week in 11 different languages. On Wednesday, we'll be sending out at 11:30 a.m. Sydney time, Sydney, Australia time, and 11:30 a.m. London time for the EU, so we have a little bit more reasonable time zone for everybody in those areas. So with that in mind, Jaavid, again, thank you, Stuart, Dean, Robert, and for everyone else, Tris, Ben, Vidal, Lily, and Stephanie, please, thank you so much for having joined us this week, and for everyone else to join us on all the channels. And we'll see everyone next week for show 275, Friday, 11:30 Eastern, US, next Friday.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.